Hey guys, my name is Paul, and I'm on staff with Christian students at CSU. I would like to take this opportunity to share with you how I received the Lord. So I grew up in a Christian home, a home that loved God, a home that read the Bible, and a home that served God. So growing up, I saw many godly people, many godly activities, many Christian practices. But as most children who grew up in such an atmosphere, I loved God and I feared God. But I also had a point where I doubted the existence of God. So in 5th grade, my family moved from Orange County to LA, and I remember distinctly having this thought: what if God's not real? What if God is just something that my parents made up? That thought really bothered me because God was at the center of our life. So I decided I need to figure this out. I need to figure out if God is real. So I decided I needed to conduct an experiment. My experiment was quite simple. I would go to the car when I was told to, when we were leaving the house, and I would go and sit in the seat that I was supposed to sit in. And as soon as I sat there, my dad would walk through the door. And the reason why that experiment was significant to me is because what would happen typically is my parents would send us to the car before we were trying to leave the house, me and my twin brother, and we would go to the garage where the car was, and we'd take stuff out and play with it. And in playing with it, we'd be playing with stuff, playing with balls, playing with bikes, playing with whatever. And then my parents would come to the garage and they'd say, "Hey, why aren't you in the car?" And we'd say, "Well, you weren't here yet." And there was always this, conversation between my parents and my brother and I. So I decided my experiment will be simple. I will go to the garage, get right in the car. As soon as I get in the car, my dad will walk through the door. If that happens, God is real. Okay? So my parents send us to the car. We're about to leave the house. So me and my twin go to the car, go to the garage. He goes out and starts playing with stuff. I go straight to the car and sit in the car. As soon as I sit down to put my seatbelt on, my dad walks right through that door. Then I knew. It's clear. God is real. There's no doubt in my mind. Since that point, for the rest of my life, I have never had a doubt that God is real. But I had not yet received him into my spirit. So I knew he was real. I knew he existed, but he wasn't in me yet. So a year later, as I was continuing in my life, I was a 6th grader, so I was hitting puberty and growing and all the awkward things that go along with that time period in your life. And I had this arrangement worked out that if I ever did anything bad or wrong, I would tell my parents eventually. Sometimes it was sooner rather than later. Sometimes it was later rather than sooner. Kind of depending on what it was. But I would tell my parents, and by telling them, that would ease the feeling in my conscience. My conscience was quite sensitive as a kid. And so whenever my conscience was bothered, I would always tell my mom or tell my dad. And in doing so, it would be appeased. But one day, I did something that I couldn't tell my mom, and I couldn't tell my dad. I didn't know who to tell. And I was weighed down with the burden of guilt, the burden of sin. And this was quite a heavy burden for, a 12-year-old going through puberty to deal with. This is quite a lot to deal with. So I tried so many things. I tried to be kinder. I tried to forget about it. I tried many things and nothing worked. And you might ask, why didn't I tell my parents? Well, I couldn't, because what I did, I was too ashamed. I couldn't tell my parents. So I began to wonder, does God still love me? Did I do something that would make him not love me anymore? And I was really quite bothered and quite concerned that I by doing one thing, I lost God's love. So this was dealing with this for a while. Then one day, there was a Christian who I knew quite well, who lived down the street from me, and he sat me down and he told me a story from the Bible, from Luke chapter 15. He told me about this son who took his inheritance that his father would give to him after he passed. He took it early. He went off to a faraway land and squandered all of it. He spent everything he had, and he found himself living in a pigsty. And he found himself wishing he could eat the food that the pigs were eating. Then he realized, the Bible says he came to himself, and he realized, even the servants in my Father's house eat better than I'm eating right now. So he decided, I'm going to go to my Father's house. I'm going to confess and say, make me a servant in your house. That was his plan. So he returns to his father's house. And the Bible is quite wonderful. It says, while he was yet a long way off, the father ran to him. And he fell on him. And he kissed him. And the son begins to apologize, begins to share his whole, his whole speech about what is, I sinned before heaven, before you. He begins to share, and the father interrupts and says to the servants, bring out the best robe, bring out the fattened calf, or bring out the sandals, bring out a ring, slay the fattened calf. My son who is dead is now alive. And so this Christian man shared this with me. So I was quite touched by the father's willingness to receive him back. And he told me, he said, this is you. He said, the Father is willing and wants to receive you back. But you simply need to confess your sin to him. Tell him you love him, confess your sin, and he will receive you back. So, with that encouragement, I went to a private room and I began to confess that one sin that was weighing me down. As soon as I confessed that sin, I said, Lord, this is what I did. Please forgive me. As soon as I said that, the Lord came in as peace. The Lord came in as joy. The Lord filled me and made me so light. It was a feeling I'd never experienced before. I was so happy. I was so encouraged. So immediately after that, I was clear. The Lord had come into me because I confessed and I believed. So after that, I was so excited. I left the room and I told my parents what happened. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, sweet experience. About a month later, I decided to get baptized. Getting baptized was really quite an experience because I was afraid. I was afraid of being baptized. I was afraid because I knew I had to pray in front of a bunch of people. And I was a shy boy. I didn't want to pray in front of people. But the night before I got baptized, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm not getting baptized. I don't want to. I didn't tell her I was afraid because I was too proud. But I did tell her I didn't want to. So she gently told me, Paul, you need to be baptized. Because you have the feeling that you shouldn't get baptized, it means that you need to. Because Satan is trying to keep you in his kingdom. So I received that from my mom. I said, okay. The next day, I was baptized. My Christian life since then has, like most of us, had its ups and downs. But that is how I received the Lord and how I was baptized.